Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Oneness Junkie podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, a self-proclaimed Oneness Junkie. Oneness Junkie is a place to be inspired, encouraged, and supported. Learn from the individuals who are working to make the world a better place. Let's meet today's guest. Hello, everyone. It's Lydia from the Oneness Junkie podcast. And today I'm actually really excited to introduce you to our next guest. I have with me here Judy Wilkins-Smith. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Lydia. It's lovely to be with you.
I'm so glad to have you here today as well. So, guys, I like to share whether I know my guest or don't know my guest from my past. And today I do not know my guest. So I am just meeting her, and you're going to meet her along with me. But I'm so thrilled to be talking about the subject matter that she's talking about. And for any of you who maybe are just catching this video on YouTube or finding my podcast for the first time, if you don't know, I spend my episodes highlighting individuals who are making the world a better place. And a lot of times where that comes from is when you work on yourself, you end up creating a better world for everyone. So that's why we're talking to Judy about the work that she does, because she helps all of us look inside and see where we can have a better, more fulfilled life. Am I right, Judy?
Absolutely, because you're super able to do that.
Yes. And that's all that we have control over actually is ourselves. So if you focus inward, then you can manifest a better life for yourself. So to get started, I'm going to have Judy share a little bit of her background that kind of led her up to this. And then also just introduce what is she doing today in the world. And then we're going to get deeper into what that is.
Okay, thank you. So I am, as I say to most people, you can hear I'm Texan, right? Not. I'm originally from South Africa, born and raised, moved over to the US, and then life took a very unexpected turn when my father was killed. And it was a matter of either I write books or I go crazy. And I figured that writing books was probably a better option. So I started writing books, and I was doing research for one of the books, and I bumped into the work that I do now, or bumped into a person who was doing the work that I do now. And they said, come study the work with me, and I'll help you with a book. Went and studied the work, got zero help with the book, by the way. But got into this work and kind of really didn't look back. I went from doing family systems to organizations to high-profile individuals and then top executives. And I think about 4 years in, somebody said to me, well, of course you're going to be able to do this work. And I went, why? And they said it started in South Africa, and I wasn't aware of that. They said it started with a Zulu tribe.
Wow.
And why that's important is because when I left South Africa and the healthcare arena, at my farewell, the person who gave my farewell speech was a Zulu gentleman. And he said to me, you may be leaving us, but you're going to find a way to represent us in the world. And I laughed. And I went, yeah. And now I do that every day.
Oh my God, wait, how long ago was that? That's amazing.
This is about 9 or 10 years ago.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So I don't think we've mentioned the name of her book is Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, right? It's
That's
in
right.
7 different languages, and I think you said 7 different countries.
Right.
And it's been highlighted in Psychology Today, but also it's on the must read at Goodread, right?
That's right.
Yeah. That's
They've
exciting.
been very kind and generous. And yes, it's on both of those places.
That's wonderful. So can we go back to naming what that system is? It's called Family Constellation.
Okay, so the work that I do is systemic work and constellations. So if you break it down, systemic work is the study of you within a system. In other words, you didn't just come into the world. you're part of a system, a family system. Even if you don't know your family, you still belong. You are always part of that system. And who you are is a result of the patterns in that family system. So I teach systemic work and constellation. So the systemic work part is that. I also teach emotional DNA. So your emotional DNA is your inheritance of your patterns of thoughts, feelings, and actions around everything that you could imagine in your life: money, relationships, leadership, being an associate, you name it. You have patterns around that, and the patterns are what run the show, and they're usually deeply unconscious. And the places where we're stuck are often the pattern that's outlived its usefulness. It can't function anymore. All it does is be a nuisance. Now it's becoming a bother, and it's limiting you, and you're not doing well. And the piece of that that's intriguing is what it's doing is it's jabbing, because it's asking you to change it, because you are the potential change agent if you choose to change. So you inherit all of those patterns of thoughts, feelings, and actions. That's your treasure trove. And the piece that you add is the chapter that only you can write. And most of us have no idea what it is or that it exists, because we're not taught to think and see that way. So that's where constellations come in and help a lot. A constellation is taking an issue that you have and placing it in front of you using either live representatives or specially marked pieces of paper, so that your whole system pops into life. Now you've got a 3D version of it, and now we can begin a conversation. And because you have all of these multiple senses engaged, your hearing, your sight, your all of that, you start to have these aha moments, and they're big embodied aha moments, and you start to shift. And so we move into epigenetics and neuroscience too.
That's amazing. You know what comes to mind? I mean, you and your associate were talking about like sticky notes and things like that.
Right.
But when you're talking, I'm like, in our virtual reality world now, that system can pop. You can put goggles on, and that system could pop up in front of you and even actually have photo representation. Has that happened yet? Has anybody created that?
No, I've thought about that honestly for a long time, that you could create a very good virtual world.
Yes.
But here's another interesting thing that people don't know. If you've watched American Idol or America's Got Talent or any of those, you know those moments when you watch somebody get it and you get goosebumps, and they're sort of riding the wave, and it's like, oh my goodness, this person is incredible. You've just sensed into their system. And we're very capable of doing that. So when I talk about representatives, I literally have live representatives. And those live representatives will suddenly say, I don't know why, but I'm feeling angry. Or I don't know why, but I need to move. And so I'll say to them, move. What is it that you need to say? And the words and the movement are very accurate. Clients will say to me, how is that possible? That's how that's possible.
Yeah, it's energetic, right? It's all energy. So, okay, a couple of things. I just want to interject because I want to get into the work, right?
Sure.
Did you say everything that you wanted to say about just the beginning introduction to what we're going to be talking about?
I think so. I think that's plenty. You and I could be here for hours, but I think that's good.
Okay, good. Well, I want to just use again, I've never met Judy, and I've actually not done family constellation. I know what it is. I've heard about it, but I haven't done it. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and hopefully my audience is wondering similar questions while they're listening in. So I have like a quick little story, and I want to ask you if this is like a representation of a decision I was making based on a family constellation type passed down experience. Sure. So in the early 2000s, I got clear, like, oh, I've always wanted to have a convertible. And then I was like, well, I had all these negative stories about convertibles coming up. And I was like, I don't even have that feeling. I was talking myself out of having a convertible. And the things I was saying to myself are the kinds of things that my father would say, like, they're impractical, they're unsafe, you can get carjacked, this, da, da, da. And so I was like, all right, the next morning I wake up and somebody in a Toyota Corolla got carjacked. And I'm like, I could get carjacked in a Toyota Corolla, which is what I was driving. So I started to realize that the reasons I wasn't moving forward with my own desires of wanting, dreaming of having convertible was somebody else's program. That was their mindset. That was their fear. That was their anxiety that I had embodied and was now living through. And so as an effort to pass through that gate of saying, that's not my story, that's not what, that's somebody else's story. And that person was still living. So it mattered what they thought. And so I actually went and purchased. But before I purchased, I called my father and I let him know why I was making this purchase. And I said, Dad, I'm only going to have it for 2 years or more. I'm not going to, it's impractical. You can't grow a family in a convertible. I said, I'm only going to have it for a few years and then I'll get rid of it. And I explained to him, what all my reasons were for wanting it and to enjoy it. And it's actually funny because I transformed his opinion about it when I brought it to this light. And then when he told my aunt, Lydia's going to buy this car, she asked me to go with her to go look at it. My aunt was like, oh, those are impractical. Those aren't, safe. You could get carjacked when the top's down. But my dad used my own language to convince her that it was okay.
So you're asking me, is that systemic? That's highly systemic. You've just described it beautifully in two ways. Thank you for doing my work for me. So here's what you did. So
that was just a real world scenario.
It's a beautiful one because so in your family system, it's don't do that. It's not practical. We shouldn't do things that are not practical. That's dangerous. You could get hurt. You could get harmed. And you're going,
Yeah, that's their anxiety, right?
Right. So you've got multi-generational anxiety because don't forget one thing. It's not that you just have your nervous system. You have a multi-generational nervous system. So you're keyed into that one going, I can't do it. It's impractical. I'm going to get jacked. I'm going to get hurt. Da, 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 da. Often these voices are those multi-generational voices and we think they're ours. They're not. But what you did was beautiful because you always have two patterns, the one that's trying to stop and the one that's trying to start through you. You have the chapter that only you can write if you choose. And so what you did was you went, well, I hear all that and I want a convertible. And you allowed the want to be bigger than the voices. And that's crucial. And you invested in, you were passionate about it. You shared it with Dad and he went, oh,
I see you're trying.
She won't get jacked. This is a very good. So you were able to say, here's the chapter that only I can write. Dad, I'm very aware of what you think, and I honor that, and I'm doing it. And Dad could go, well, what didn't work for me may work for you. So you went click, click, which is exactly the work we do. When you start to change things moving forward, you also start to change them going backwards.
Yeah. And yes. Let me just finish the part of the story that's really funny is I bought the car, I had it. He wanted my Toyota Corolla because he was like, oh, I want a little runaround car. So I think he paid me like $2,000 for it or something. But then he said, this is so funny. And my dad was like 80 something years old when I did this. And he goes, well, when you're finished with this car, I'll buy it from you.
Oh, isn't that
amazing? I transformed that I almost gave him permission. That's something that can happen.
Yes.
It's my new light of way of looking at this allowed him freedom. He found freedom vicariously through my decision. And then he wanted it too.
You broke the limiting cycle, which gave him permission to go, okay. So you 1-2 backwards and you broke it going forward.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. And I would just want to encourage people, find something in your life where this may not be a car. Maybe it's a relationship you want, or maybe it's a job you want. And someone's telling you, don't be the florist. Don't be the gardener. That doesn't make any money. Figure out what it is that you're stopping yourself from and then recognize you could be the light that changes their pain from their frustration and their anxiety, and you can bring change to the generation still alive, that can be helped.
And the ones to come, because what you're doing, what you did there was the old emotional DNA was still in play. You went stop and you started new emotional DNA.
Yeah.
And that then winds forward, because now you can have a whole bunch. You go, what do you mean I can't have a convertible? She had a convertible. I'm getting a convertible.
Absolutely. Right. That's so true that we say that. She did it. Why can't I do it? How come I can't marry the boyfriend that I love that's not that great? She did it.
Exactly. So you did a beautiful textbook emotional DNA click switch.
That's fun. And it was a car, so it's not as serious when you're talking about marriage or whatever, but still it's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing. You gave your brain permission to think differently and not get stuck in the small box.
Yeah. So you work with like corporations and, executives and people that like their lives are affected, and their decisions in their corporations and their CEO decisions are affected by their background. I actually know some people that's the case for, and it blocks them. So I understand, you've worked with Disney, the Disney Corporation, and lots of big companies. Chevron, I think I saw. You work for
Chevron, JP Morgan, Mars. Mars is a big one. Yeah.
My aunt had that same aunt that we're talking about. She had almost a 40 year, I think, maybe not that long, with Chevron, like from the 50s. She was there wearing gloves to work every morning. I mean, can you imagine putting on her little hat? And
I love it. Yes, that's when they dressed beautifully.
Yes, her little gabardine outfit to go to her interview. She talked about that. So anyway, okay. So what do you want to, can we get into some real life stories? Like I've seen that you've talked about, problems. Like I wanted to talk about your obesity, addictions, anxiety, lack of motivation, low self-esteem. You call these gold mines. Why do you call like obesity, for instance? Let's talk about that, because I have another channel I might have you back on to help with the wellness conversation.
Okay, so let's talk about obesity. Obesity has many different flavors. Why I say it's a gold mine is because when you get something that you're so stuck with, or that grabs you, or that's so limiting, it's telling you time to change. I'm telling you it's time to change. And it's actually waiting for you to wake up, and it's giving you clues. Now, obesity has a ton of systemic components to it. There are many, but some of them are things like if children have been lost, or parents have been lost, or family members have been lost, I expand my body to include the missing ones. So that's one.
I've heard that.
One of the other big ones is with obesity, we often confuse our two foods. We have emotional food and physical food. You should be able to eat an infinite supply of emotional food and a finite supply of physical food. But when we don't get the emotional food, our brain flips it, and now we start to eat too much of the physical food. So it's what I cannot take into my soul, I take in through my mouth.
That is so amazing. I love that you're saying that. And I hope you have an answer for that. Like, how do you switch it? That would be the key, right?
And it's unique to each person. It's never one size fits all, because every one of us has special click points. What set me off here? What made me think this? So I listen very carefully to hear what you're bringing me with. Here are questions I would ask around obesity. When did it start for you? What was happening in your life at the time? What do you make it mean about you? What did you make it mean about others? Who else in your family may have a similar pattern? Was there a specific event with a specific decision? Because events create reactions that create decisions, and language that create mindsets that we then make the truth only it's not the truth. It's just your truth.
Right.
And you
That's
can
so
change that.
amazing. I love that. And I mean, I think your counterpart told me that you might be open to like doing a real kind of experience, but just to share, like, yes, I had a loss. My sister died in front of me in 1991. And that was a really big trauma. And someone told me like 2 years ago, you're carrying the weight that your sister represented. And that's about right. I am about that many pounds overweight. So my question is that when you and I am aware that I use food to satisfy, like, well, I don't have this in my life, so I'm going to give myself what I want, instead of some people choose their lives to be restrictive because it's healthier for you to be restrictive and moderate and all these things. Sometimes I just say, screw it. I just want to eat this or whatever, because I don't have those emotional things in my life. So with that said, how do you get the emotional things in your life to solve that side, to flip your brain back to what you don't have? How do you do that?
So if you're looking at what you don't have, what would you say that you don't have?
I don't have, like the ideal love of my life or even a love. Okay, let's like say like whether they're the ideal one or not, I don't have like a partner that I share my life with. And of course, some of that's my decision, right? But the right partner for me hasn't shown up. And I'm not blaming that partner. I'm just saying it hasn't happened. That's all. I'm not negative about it. I mean, some of it is that I'm really particular. Like I need a lot of good communication, and I haven't met anyone who's been willing to communicate at the level that I want to communicate for me to be in a partnership with them. So I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying I don't have it. Okay. So how do we go from there?
So how do we go from there? Who's the person who communicates with you the best, or as growing up, who communicated the best with
my
you?
sister, I would say. I have the most connection with my sister that's close to me.
Is that the one who died?
No. No, this is the one that calls me on our way to work, and we talk, and we've evolved and grown spiritually together. And now we can talk on the same level, and it's fulfilling. Like I enjoy dialoguing with her. So it's different when you have friends and you're not able to dialogue at the same alignment level. So you just accept that not everybody's going to be on your journey with you.
So what would you like the most? If you were to say, what I would like, here's what I don't have. What would you want that you don't have?
Oh, well, I want more money. That's one thing. But I'm working on that and I'm creating that. But, like as far as partnership and love, it's just having someone for me to love, give love to, but also who equally wants to receive, who wants to give back so that I may receive, kindness, generosity, physical touch is a big part for me. Like my love language is physical touch and words of affirmation. And so, like I enjoy getting loved that way. So I want to find somebody who has those love languages. I mean, quality time and all that's nice. But if I don't feel, because I'm a HSP, which is a highly sensitive person. And so I have certain criteria that I need to feel loved, if that matters.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you what I hear, and then I have a couple of questions. So what I hear are you said, I'm highly particular. I have a very specific way that I need to be loved. Does it sound to you at all like you may be putting up 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 small barriers to someone coming in?
Barriers to sale.
So that would just be a question to think about. But the other thing I would ask is, tell me about your mom and dad.
Well, I was going to tell you that I know that the way that my father loved us was through acts of service and probably quality time. And he wasn't affectionate, and he definitely would not tell us verbally. So I know that I'm lacking. And the same with my mom. They were kind of a pair in that regard. I mean, she definitely will bake the cookies and give her time and sacrifice her life and have sleepless hours because she's sewing our Easter dresses, 4 little Easter girl dresses the night before till 2 a.m. I mean, that was my mom. That's how she shows her love, through her, time and quality. She's not going to tell me, and she's definitely not going to hug me, so I can say that those areas are where I was lacking. And so that's why I desire to have people external to me to provide that to me through a love relationship, I guess. Does that help you?
It does. What it also tells me, though, is kind of you're the voice for the love that your parents didn't have.
And I've given it back to them. Do you know that, I don't know, maybe a decade or more, probably 15, 20 years ago, I got an inspiration that maybe God gave me these gifts, because I used to be mad that this is important. Audience, listen to this lesson I got. I used to be mad at my parents for not giving me what I wanted that they lacked, when in fact I got woken up to the fact that maybe I had these skill sets to give it to them. So I started demonstrating to them what I wanted back so they could feel it. And it's actually made our relationship better because they were lacking it. Right. They were lacking those things. So it's like squeezing a dry turnip. You're asking people to give you something they don't even have themselves. And if you have it, it's yours to give away. It's yours to be generous with. It's yours to teach. Right?
Yeah. So again, what you did was you broke that cycle. So I'm curious about your parents' backgrounds. Did they have loving parents?
No, I mean, my dad was born during the Depression, and no, they didn't have that great of a relationship. I don't want to, my aunt would be miserable if I actually went too deep into what I thought about our family on a global podcast. But let's just say, suffice it to say, I didn't know my mother's parents, but my mother's representation of their love was that it was good. So that's all that kind of matters. It's like, if that's her perspective, right, that's what matters. So she doesn't have any negative things to say about her father or her mother. And I knew her mother, so she was she was kind of like me. She kind of had like a happy disposition, kind of positive attitude. But she died when I was 17. So I didn't get to know her, too in depth. The other mother was a little bitter and a little crusty, and she loved people, but she had lots of needs, and she was a little bit narcissistic. But then she kind of raised a narcissistic son. Her daughter's very generous and very giving. But that same daughter, who's my aunt, is very giving to others. And she doesn't she might have friends that give her something back, but she didn't have like one central person giving it back to her either. She's kind of alone,
So yeah. So if I was setting up a constellation, I would be curious. I would wonder, would you find a closeness to that aunt? Do you, in fact, do we have a furry?
Sorry, yeah, she wants to go outside, so I'm going to hold her while you're talking.
Okay, so I would wonder if with that aunt not having that specific person, if you align with that aunt, because that can happen. There are two of you giving it, but not receiving it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, she never married. She never had kids. I never married. Well, I haven't yet married. I'm only 54, and I didn't have kids, but I didn't do that because I didn't want it. I did it because I didn't find the right connection to go do that with. And I was a little bit more aware of what I wanted at a very young age. And I know people have a hard time understanding that, but I had 3 sisters who were making marital decisions. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that. And I don't want that. And so then I started deciding, what do I want? And then of course it didn't show up, but I'm not giving up on it. I think it's still possible. I got half of my life left to have love and give love and be love and all that stuff.
Absolutely. What I would say though, is you and your aunt both know how to give it.
Right.
I'm not so sure that either of you knows how to receive it.
Right. Or that we put up all these rules about how they need to give it in order for us to receive it. So I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah, you can't do that. Don't step over that. Watch out for that landmine. No, we're not doing that one. Yeah.
Right.
And on
That's
people
hilarious.
going, okay, no, she's not letting me in. No, I'm not exact. Yeah. You
Right.
really want to go and have a good look at. So do I need all of those pieces in place? Or, yes, there are things that I really, really want and I want to receive. And it's okay for me to see what comes along. But if you put up too many barriers.
No, that's great. It's good. I also recognize, like, through my personal growth and evolution, I've learned that a lot of those things, maybe when I was 25, that I was looking for somebody to provide me, I learned that actually it's my responsibility to give those things to myself and not expect my partner to do those things. So now my gauges for what I expect out of a partner has totally gone more towards, what do I give myself? They're just kind of the ancillary prize, that's
Yes.
there to enjoy life with, right?
Yes, because what you've done as well now is you've gone from I need someone, and you need to be aware of that. You've gone from I need someone to I can choose. And you've gone from I need a man to I'm enough
Yeah,
and I can choose. So
right. And I can create, and then I can enjoy whatever that person brings to the
absolutely,
table.
you get to go on an adventure that many of the women in your family did not go on.
Yeah. Yeah, I am aware that I stopped generational, what is it called? Generational passed down. I can't think of the
Yeah,
term y'all use.
the generational patterns that echo through the system. Yeah,
Right. I mean, when I chose to not
transference.
have kids, I was consciously aware that I wasn't in such a state at that. After my sister died in front of me, I was so more interested in just surviving myself. I wasn't looking to procreate and have a baby. I was just deciding whether my life was going to go on.
Right.
So I wasn't in a place of go make a baby. I wasn't in a stable position to want to raise a baby. And I know not everybody who gets pregnant is in that conscious
I
conversation
know,
with
most of them
people,
are not.
but
No,
I was, and that's all that mattered, is that I
right.
was aware that I didn't want to go create another offspring when I didn't even feel solid in my sense of self, so I went on that journey instead.
And not with a big trauma like that. That's a big trauma.
Yeah. And it was like a big trauma because of how it happened. She basically fell off of an 8-story building right in front of me. And I had to go down 8 levels to go see her splat on the ground. So it was very traumatic, and it was very shocking. And, as some people who've listened to my intro on my podcast, I particularly believe that she created an accident. And then I had some subsequent confirmation through a spiritual connection I had through talking with her through a medium. And she admitted that she created an accident because she was embarrassed to commit suicide. She wanted to protect the family, and she didn't want
Wow.
anyone to know that her ego didn't want anyone to know that she wanted to die. But that was my suspicion all along because of the way it happened. And the way it happened. I mean, I had to communicate to the police how it happened. It could have gone totally not on her plan, and it could have been horrible, but it wasn't. She created an accident, and that is how it was ruled. But in my opinion, it was a decision that she made. Unfortunately, she just chose to involve me in her decision without telling me that she was doing that.
And
So anyway, it was
curious
a lot.
about that. I'm really curious about that. So she has this accident. You're there as well. I'm curious. That's a very idiosyncratic event. Is it? I would just be curious to know if anyone else in the family ever died in a very odd way, because
I don't know the specifics, but my second sister is very involved in ancestry because she understands the patterns that get created because of the past. And so she found out that my dad's father had a sister that no one ever talked about. And apparently she died when she was younger, like 19, 20, or I don't know. My sister would know the details, but apparently somebody did die. They never talked about it. So to me, it makes me wonder, was it more controversial of a death than no
Well,
one?
it's certainly an unspoken of death, so it's an
Exactly.
unprocessed death.
Right. And this is like two generations. So my dad was one, right? One generation, and then his father, and that was her sister. So what is that, like a great great aunt or something?
So that lives there. And here's the interesting piece for you. When we make secrets, when we cover up what's there and we won't talk about it, they find ways to repeat in subsequent generations.
Yeah. 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 It's
And there comes your
unfortunately. Yeah.
sister. So
Yeah.
that's not resolved. It keeps repeating, and people go, how? The patterns are saying you have not given me a place in the system, and systems don't like that. If you don't give everything its place, they keep looking for a later member of the system to see it and give it its place so that it can stop. In
Yeah.
your sister's case, to repeat it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I'm glad. I mean, actually, like, I have never gone to that level of detail publicly. Like, here I am on this global platform, and I've never gone to the kind of detail that I just described on this on any platform or any media. So that's like the first time of like just really sharing the story. Like, when I talk about it in my intro, I just say my sister committed suicide and I was present or in front of me. I don't go into the details of
right.
like how it happened. And so that's like releasing more of the energy around not talking about it. Right. I mean, my family
Absolutely.
talks, like my sisters, there were four of us. One's gone, the first one, now the three are left. And we can talk about it. We can dig into it, talk about Sharon and herself and all this stuff. That's her name. And, but I mean, my mom and dad, my aunt definitely doesn't want to talk about it, and that's fine. That's where they're at. I'm not going to force anything but I mean, we don't stop talking about it because they're
Right.
uncomfortable. We still bring it up or still say, I wonder what. And actually, last year was the 30-year anniversary of this scenario. And my aunt, I'm going to call her my ancestry.com sister, that sister and myself and my mom were all in a room. I think my sister was on the phone or Zoom or something. I can't remember. We were all together, but we had an in-depth conversation about what were you doing that day? What do you remember about that day? We really my mom was sharing oh, I got the phone call and I got this and then I drove. And, so we were really kind of going through the
You were
memories
debriefing it.
Yeah. I mean, and, we didn't do that much over the 30 years. I mean, we might've did it in the beginning, but we did it in a memorial type conversation about what do you remember now that 30 years has gone by about that? And I was about 21, 22 years old at the time. And that sister who did that was 30 years old. She died at 30 years old.
You want to find out what was the age of the other one who died.
Yeah.
Now, there are a couple of important things. First of all, your genealogy sister will want to read my book because that'll explain a lot to her. What I do is genealogy 3.0. So 1.0 is what she's doing.
Yeah.
2.0 begins to look at the events that have happened in the system. 3.0, which is what I do, is okay, so we have the events, we have the effects. Now, what is the gift and what do we do with them?
Yeah.
Now, the other piece that's important is for you. If this happened with your sister in front of you, and she was an older sister, sometimes quite subconsciously, we may tell ourselves things like, if she couldn't live a full life, how dare I? And then we stop ourselves from completing things like maybe relationships, different areas of our lives. So that's a very important piece for you to be aware of.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. The other thing I used to think is, when it happened and I was 21, I was like, I just graduated from college. The world was my oyster. I was about to go live in Italy and this happened and it derailed my life. And basically I was like, is this all there is? You graduate and then tragedy happens, so I set out on a journey to find the meaning of life. And I've been in that journey. Part of it has to do with the meaning of life is the meaning that you make it, right? The meaning that you create.
Very much the meaning you make of it. But listen to this little systemic sentence that went into your head. I graduate and tragedy happens. Now it's a question of, whoa, I'm a little bit frightened of this because anything I do well, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right.
This is not good. So you want to be aware of, I always say to people at the crucial moments in your life, the significant moments in your life, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I actioning? Because it's about to become my new truth. Be very, very aware.
I'm going to go a little step further and see what you think about this. So I definitely have like a story that I say about how, I don't repeat it to myself, but I'm just telling you it exists inside my subconscious, that when I graduated from high school, there was tragedy in my family with that sister. Okay. Like she was marrying someone she met at Narcotics Anonymous, and the family was in uproar and basically was, people were boycotting the wedding, So here I am in my joyous achievement that I went and sat in confirmation for all my other sisters. And it was my time finally to shine and graduate from high school. And This bullshit is happening in our family where the attention was on that. The second thing is when I came back from living in Italy, when my other sister came back from living in Australia, Austria, we basically killed the fatted calf and had a bunch of excitement and thrill, and everybody was joyful to have the sister home. When I came back, there was another tragedy in our family, which I don't need to name, but the family was in anxiety and stress mode. And so it's like, hurry up, get Lydia home from Italy and tell her the truth of what's going on. So like I had one day arriving from home and the next morning, my world changed. Okay. So that was another sister. Okay. That my world shifted. Then when I graduated, I was so happy. I had lived in Italy and now I was going back and I had a plan and I just lost 50 pounds. And then like 7 days before I walked across stage, my sister committed suicide and decided to choose to have me be there when she did it. So every time I had an exciting achievement in my life, things were happening. Tragedy was happening around me. So I have a story. Like not only the story of like, I wouldn't say I don't achieve amazing things. I think people say you're an overachiever. You have 3 podcasts and 5 YouTube channels in 2 years, So like I'm doing amazing things on my own, right? But there's no one there saying good job.
Absolutely. So what you're saying is every time something good happens for me and it's time to celebrate me, we do tragedy and everything turns left and goes somewhere else.
I don't live with that in my conversations. Like my sisters might be hearing this for the first time, but what I will say is that it lives in my head. It lives in my head and I need to transform it.
You absolutely want to transform that.
Yeah, I know. Cause I think that I have blocks for, my weight loss blocks. And then but that's because I'm trying to give myself what I don't have,
Yes. You're actually trying to validate self because no one else has been there when you've needed it. When it's been a celebration time.
I definitely don't want to imply that no one's ever been there for me. Like, let's get that record straight. I don't think that way. I'm just saying, like, I have a little story running,
right,
about the life circumstances, that, like, I'm actually doing a speech. Like, my plight is going to be how to have joy after tragedy and how to define your own level of success. Because for me, success doesn't mean I made $1 million. That's a byproduct of success. But success defined for me is freedom and joy. And I want to teach that. I want to share that with the world.
And you are doing that already.
Yeah,
you're doing both of those things. I'm still curious about that little piece you have in your head. How could If you have that little piece in you, because it makes a difference.
I
It
know.
sneaks into places.
And by the way, I do
imagine.
think us using you as an example, people are going to love and want to work with you and want to buy your book because they're going to understand they have something they can work on from my example.
Every one of us has something. What you I think may not even have missed, but what also is obvious to me is you have a triumph, then there's a tragedy and not a celebration.
Right.
But you still keep climbing.
Right.
So you're able to build triumph even in the face of tragedy. You're
Right.
consistently able to build triumph even in the face of tragedy. You do not let that get you down. So where most people would collapse and say, I give up and whatever it is, you go, okay, so what you're epitomizing is in every pile of junk, there are gems. You've learned to find the gems, even though the junk wants to hijack it that way. And so one of the other things I would say to you is when you have your next really big thing, even if there's something that starts to go left, make sure that you are celebrating it. Make sure that you don't get hooked into that piece because, yes, it can very much become a reality for us. What you want to say is, the convertible, you've got the ability. Remember the convertible. The convertible means I know how to convert things. The convertible is an amazing symbol. I know how to convert limiting language into possibility thinking. So when it comes, how do I take what looks like this pile of junk that's a tragedy and go, so we're going to do this with it?
True transformation, right?
And you are capable of it. You showed it literally, listen to the words, with a convertible.
And that's something people can understand, right? If you go straight to the suicide, like that's like too much for people, right?
Well, yeah, but even with the suicide, which is awful, you want to sit when something like that happens and go, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? What are my actions? What do I need to take from this so that I can build it differently and it doesn't crush me?
Yeah. Can I tell you what my little 21-year-old mind said when that
Please,
happened? There was
please.
a group that someone recommended to me called Survivors of Suicide. It's a national organization. And I went like to one or two things. And what I remember feeling was they were all telling their stories about how it happened somewhere else, and I was like, I can't relate, because it happened in front of me. And it was really kind of unique that someone would commit suicide in front of another person.
Right.
And so I just said, I'm not going to be a survivor. I'm going to thrive. I decided that I was going to thrive. I was not going to let this, first of all, her choice
Right.
to impose on my life. That was her choice. But I had a choice too, right? My choice was to thrive. And so, of course, I haven't thrived in the, like it wasn't all the time and it didn't happen fast. I've been doing this for 30 years, like I have been working on this, but I'm never going to stop. I am always going to be working on myself and my personal self-development and my personal growth. This is my commitment to my life. And from an even higher spiritual conversation, some of us believe, including me, that this is actually why we're all here. And it's just these little bitty tragedies and breaks in our lives that crack us open to get us on our journey. So this is my personal belief, but not everybody can see their tragedies and their horrible things in this way. I hope they can one day.
Well, you did. And what you actually told yourself as well is, I don't quit. It doesn't matter if there is tragedy in my life, I will still be okay. That's a huge piece. You actually told yourself, I will be okay. Now, that makes all the difference. It's why you can keep bouncing back. It's why you are resilient. I have somebody, and she won't mind me talking about this. She's actually in the book. She heard that her stepfather, was terminally ill. And she turned to her coworker and she said, I will not be okay. And for the next 30 years, she was not okay. Even when she was doing, and this woman is incredibly successful. She's now taken up a huge position in a very big company, incredibly successful. But until about, I think it was about 4 years ago, she still carried the I am not okay. And we went for a walk and I said to her, is it time to give that back? And is it time to tell him, you know what? I'm okay. And she said, I'd never ever thought of it. And it started to change things for her. I will be okay. That is a systemic sentence. And that in the moment is what keeps you going when it would flatten the hooey out of everybody else. You go, no, I understand this. In my DNA, it's I will be okay.
I know. And my genealogy sister is figuring out why we have that kind of stamina. Like all three of my sisters are really strong people, even though our parents are less strong personalities. All three of us are, so that DNA got passed through my mom. Although I will say my mom is strong in different ways. Like when we have a Hurricane Harvey, you know what that is, right? How devastating that was for our city. My mom's like, I grew up in pioneer days. I can sit here in the 100-degree heat without air condition. And I'm like, I'm going to my aunt's house where there's air conditioned to sleep. Like I don't have it like at that level. I have it in other ways. So we all have our gifts, right?
I love that. You've all got that grit.
Yeah, but we all have our gifts, right? Like you're not always going to have the same gifts.
Nope.
Every family member has different qualities and different traits. And frankly, I don't try to compare myself to other people. I am my own person standing on my own. And when you get that about yourself, you are more sustainable and resilient, right?
Absolutely. You are yourself on your own within your family system. And your family system is literally there as a gift and a series of clues for you to figure out a very best life.
Yes. Let me just ask you, because there's we went on a spin. I took you on a journey that you probably weren't expecting, but I really
never know what to expect.
Well, exactly. And you didn't prepare. That means you go with the flow, because whatever divine energy wants to be shared gets shared. So let me just ask you, because I know you're busy and you have things to do, but I want to ask you, what are some of the things you want us to know that I didn't ask you about? Like, is there something in particular that you want to tell us about so that we should be thinking about it? And maybe if you want, we'll have you back on. What do you want to tell us? Like, is there anything we didn't get to cover that you need to let the audience know about?
I don't think so. I think you did really beautifully with me, and thank you for that. I love that you were willing to go on a journey with me and we could explore. I think the most important thing, there are two. You're a remarkable life if only you know how to see it. That's number one. Number two, who and where you are now is no predictor of who and where you will be later.
Awesome.
And you want to always find those gems. They are never, ever not there. They're always there. You just have to be willing to look.
That's beautiful. And what a wonderful guide that you are with all your years of working with people. How do people work with you? Like, do you actually do individual cases still, or do you only work with corporations?
No, I do some individual cases, but one of the best ways to work with me is at a live event.
Okay.
At a live event, people then get to see this work in action, and they get to experience it for themselves, and they get to experience their own transformation. And I do those in Dallas, but I also have a really interesting one. I'm teaching Money DNA November 5th through 8th at Disney World.
Oh, fun. Like for the employees or who?
No, this is for the public. It's at the Beach and Yacht Club, and it's open to the public. And then what we do is we do a deep dive into your money DNA. Where does it come from? How does it show up? How do you change it? What do you want it to be? And people who've taken this before, many of them come back and say to me, I had my best year ever, or yeah, I'm now in that bracket, or my life changed because I never realized what money meant for me. So that's one of the ways. And then, of course, the book. And they can always find me at my website, which is Judy Wilkins-Smith, or judywilkins-smith.com. And there are meditations there. For anybody who knows Joe Dispenza's work, he's the guy who composes for his meditations is the composer and the producer of my meditation.
Oh, great. You mean the musical part of it?
Yes, the musical part for it. He also did the production for me. He's an amazing gentleman. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. There's a lot on YouTube. You can find me all over. Oh, and Spotify.
Do you have a relationship, or did you study with Joe Dispenza at all?
No, I did not. I've been to one of his events, did not, but people keep asking me, did he base his work on yours, or does he work with you? And the answer is no. And I'm sure that at some point we're going to connect, because people keep asking us this. Yeah.
I've read his books. And of course, I first met him by watching the movie The Secret when it first came out, before anyone else was like aware of it. It was like I was in a spiritual metaphysical community.
Right.
And so I got my hands on the first copy, and we like did it at a church or whatever. Anyway, that's where I met him for the first time on that platform. And I think that was probably in his earlier days.
Right.
That was like, what, over 20 years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I would love to have him on a podcast.
He's quite an amazing gentleman.
No, he is. He's busy. And I went to his big thing here in Houston. So you're not coming to Houston though, are you?
I am. I will actually be in Houston. I think it's
June. I think it's June, maybe.
It is June. I will tell you.
We'll tell everybody, because this is going to live for years down the road. So tell everybody this is 2023. So if you're this is April 2023. So go to her website and see where she's going to be in a city near you soon.
And it will be June 22nd through 25th.
Okay, good. That's what I thought it was June.
Yeah, they will find all the details there.
Yes. So if anyone who's so curious what the name of her book is, again, Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. And I want to shout out to Poland, because there's some Polish people who found my podcast. So is it in Poland yet? You said it was in 7 languages.
Yes. It's in Croatia, and there's another one, but it's not. It's in Croatia, the Netherlands. It's number 2 in the Netherlands at the moment. It's in Germany, Taiwan,
Spanish.
Spain. Yeah. I'm trying to think of who is it. There is a little one that's sort of it's not Croatia, but it's in and around. So
it's not the Ukraine or anything like that.
No, but I'm guessing at some point Poland will also go, here we are.
Well, maybe we'll get a shout out to Poland. So the book's written in Poland soon.
There we go.
Awesome. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to get to know you better. I'm going to get the book. Maybe I can put a link below so people can have quick access to the book. Is it selling on Amazon by chance?
Yeah, it is. Okay, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, you name it.
Okay, good. Well, I will put a link to your book there, and people can find you for years down the road. And if you ever need anything, or if you need us to talk about something else that you're up to or doing, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll have another conversation.
Sounds online. Wonderful. I would love to come back and talk to you again.
Yes, maybe I'll be able to see you in Houston in June. So lucky me. Or I'm thinking about maybe I need to go to Disney.
Disney is an amazing experience. It is.
I bet that's a great, facility to be at to do that. So anyway, yes, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your wisdom and everything that you're offering to the world to help make the world a better place. I've truly enjoyed it.
And thank you for having me. It was such fun.
Yes. All right. We'll see you in a little while. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this inspirational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. If you are a self-proclaimed oneness junkie, get yourself a t-shirt and spread the message of oneness in your community. And finally, if you have a story to share or know someone that should be a guest on this podcast, contact us at onenessjunkie.com. See you next time. And remember, when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. Compassion starts with you and me.